All right, it looks like everyone's here. So welcome to the Part 3 Basics training today. My name is Maggie, and I'm a former CA and former Part 3 customer. So I bring years of experience to the product. Today, we're going to cover the project basics. So I'll teach you how to set up your organization, create a project, navigate the main menu, and we'll walk through RFIs and submittals. I'm going to turn off my camera until the end of the session when I'll open up the conversation for Q&A. And we have a chat box in our live storm platform here, so you can add questions at the end there. All right, so when you first log into part 3, this is what you're going to see. This is the dashboard, and there are 3 tabs here. So we have your projects, your tasks, and your project groups. So your project, that displays all of your projects that you're included on. And you can also use the plus create new here to create a new project in part 3. Your task displays all of your tasks, and you can sort them based on document type, project, and due date, just with the filters here. And you'll notice that it will show all of your tasks on every project that you have due. And you can also filter that with this drop-down menu if you only want to look at one of your projects. So that's really handy and a good area to go so that you can prioritize your day and figure out what tasks you need to look at. Project groups displays your assigned projects as well as any projects at your company. And on the right-hand side here, we have mentions, and I'll show you what that looks like a little bit later at the document level. But this is where you can communicate with your consultant team in part 3. So anytime someone mentions you in a document, you'll get a notification here, and you can click right into that document to respond back. So this is our comments area. This is the same across all document types in part 3. Below mentions are organizations, and this displays any organization or company that you're a part of, and you can always click into that to get to your organization level. And then we have our Help Center link here, which links you to hundreds of Part 3 help documents, which is super helpful when you're working in Part 3. So if you were looking for something on, say, submittals, then you can access that help document, and they all have screenshots, so it's very easy to follow. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like to go into your organization to set up a project. So like I said, you can access your organization here, but if you weren't on the dashboard, you can always access it by this drop-down menu at the top left-hand corner. So you have your projects displayed here as well as your organizations. So coming into the organization, you'll see 4 different tabs here. We have projects, people, billing, and settings. Let's take a peek at settings to start. So the first thing you want to do when you get into part 3 is to upload a high quality company logo and to set your basic information. And this will be displayed on your cover pages like change and instruction documents and any other cover pages that we have. Disclaimers is the next thing to set up. So these are disclaimers that you'll typically carry forward from any Word doc or any other legal disclaimer that you might have. And it's what would be displayed on your cover pages. So for example, this is my submittals disclaimer, and I'm going to set this up at the organization level so that every project can use the same disclaimer. And this just helps maintain a company standard for each project. Next, we have cover pages, and this is where you would set any colors that match your company branding, and you can put in a hex code if you know that. This can be changed at any time. And I'm going to skip reports and layouts. It's just not applicable to the basics training today. And let's head on over to the People's tab. So at the People's tab, we have members and directory. Members is anyone within your organization. So this is part 3. I'm a part 3 customer, and these are the people at the company. And we have a few different roles here that you'll see. So we have admin, member, and there's also viewer. So to start building out your company, you would click invite member, and then you would add their information. So first and last name, email address, and then the role. And the role is the most important thing to set here. And we describe them, but I'll just quickly touch on each. So admins control everything like disclaimers and cover page settings that I just showed you, while members can participate and view projects, while a viewer can really only view the project, but they can't participate. So this would be more like a principal at Prime's organization. So viewer is essentially a free seat in part 3, and you can always reference your billing tab if you want to know how many seats you have and what you can use, just to make sure that you're not going over. Directory is the directory for all of your consultants. And the beauty about adding your consultants at this level, at the organization level, is that again, you'll be able to add them easily at the project level, and that would be across all projects. And we also have the option to import directory contacts with an Excel or CSV file. So it makes it really easy. Moving over to the Projects tab. So to set up a project, there's two simple steps for you to complete, and you don't need to worry about it because you can always modify this at any time later on. Just before we get into that, these are all the projects that at my company, and you'll see the same with yours. And then there's also archive projects. So if you're finished up with a project, you can always archive it. We're not going to delete it. That history is maintained. So to create a project, we're going to click the plus project, and now I'll enter the basic information starting with the project name. So in this case, I'll call this the basics. And my role is architectural, so I'll leave that there. We're going to add our project start date and end date, as well as the contract value. Like I said, you can modify any of this info later on. Now we have our time zones. You just want to make sure that that information is accurate. And the reason for this is because when you're on your field reports, you want to show what time you're working in. So that will be reflected when you're creating a report. Project categories, this is all internal information. It doesn't actually reflect anything on your project. It's more for sorting of your project groups. So it's all optional, but in this case, I'll say it's an education project and it's a new build and it's a construction management project or contract. And now we'll add the address. And this is optional as well, but I'm going to add, and then a project number, as well as permit numbers. The next step is figuring out which documents apply to your project. So today I'm going to select just submittals and RFIs, and I'll keep instructions and the other documents toggled off. Again, this can always be toggled on later. And if you knew that your project was going to be Procore connected, you would toggle that on here. And then you select create project. And now you can see we have a new project in our projects list here, and we're immediately brought to the Teams page. And the first thing you want to focus on once you've created your project is to build out your team, like who's going to participate on your project from an owner, general contractor, and consultant perspective. And this will really help set the foundations for your project. So the first thing you want to do is start adding your companies. And to do this, you select plus company. And given that we're a collaborative platform, the more people that you add to your project, the more you'll get from the platform. So if you have existing projects in Part3, or if you've imported your contacts at the directory, which I just showed you, you can search for them in the directory here. So if that was the case, I would just select the company and I could say that they're civil consultant and then add the company. If you wanted to add a company that isn't in your directory, you could do that. We'll say development. So you would just put the company name and select create new company. And this is where you can upload their logo, their address, their phone number, and then the role again. So I'm going to say that they are my structural consultant. And if your company is if a consultant company is dual role, you can always add that here by selecting add another role. So we could say that they're also mechanical, and then you would add company, and you can see here that we have that dual role shown. So we have mechanical and structural included for RLW development. So the next thing to do is to add a member to the company. So do this by selecting the three dots next to the consultant, click add member, and then again, you can search your directory to easily add somebody. And if they're not in the directory, you can put their name and their email, and we'll continue that step. So we have the role already selected for the company. Now we need to look at the permissions. So dashboard permissions, this is typically for the prime consultant company, so internal. And the reason for this is because there's some data points like performance stats that you might want to share with your team. You might want to keep that internal to your company. For example, maybe your electrical consultant is holding something up. You might not want everyone on the team to see that. So that's totally up to you. But typically, dashboard permissions is for prime company only, while signing authority is for anyone who signs a document, like a PC or a CO. So this might be a GC or a consultant or an owner. And then distribution is for whoever should be receiving finalized documents. So in this case, I'm going to select signing authority and distribution list for permissions. And then we have our send project invite email, which if you would like, you can deselect this if you're just building out your team. So in this case, we can see that we haven't notified them because we're just building out our team. Some people like to do this where they add their consultants, their companies, and then they add all their people. And then once they feel confident and ready that they have their project set up, then they will send the invite by selecting these three dots and then clicking send invite. And then you just do the same for all the other companies, the three dots plus member. I'm going to show you how to add somebody else. So we'll say Jane Doe, create a new contact. So we would need an email address there. The phone is optional. We have the company. So then we're going to add the permissions. And then again, you can either select to have send project invite or deselect. So I'm going to go to a project that's a little bit more built out so you can see what it looks like at that Teams page. So you can see that I have a number of companies and consultants populated here. And once these contacts join the project, they can participate right away. And while you're here, you'll notice a few different icons next to members' names, which you can always hover over to understand the status. So in this case, a green check mark indicates that the email has been enabled. It means they've joined the project. While an envelope with a check mark means that the invitation email delivered, and the triangle with the exclamation is that the email failed, and this is because it's not an actual valid email address. So from here, let's move on to the project settings. So in the general area, this is all the information that I entered when I first created the project. So it might look familiar to you. If I needed to edit it, I can come back anytime and edit that information by clicking the edit option. And in this area, we have a addition of a review period. And this is normally based on your contract. So it indicates how long you have to review a submittal or an RFI. And you can set these here anytime you create a submittal or RFI, we automatically input that date for you. So if your contract said submittals need to be reviewed within 4 days, RFIs within 3, then you would modify that information here and click save, and you'll see that there. There's also the option to switch from calendar days to business days as well. Next, you want to upload your project manual if you want to activate the AI and enable the submittal assistant to get AI submittal review features. And you would do this by uploading one combined PDF document of your spec with all disciplines included. So this would include architectural, mechanical, electrical, structural. It's one PDF. We can't accept multiple PDFs at this time, but this is where you would upload it. And then as you're going through the upload process, it will ask, do you want to populate your logs? And this means that it will create submittals based on your specification. And you can say yes or no, but I will say if your project is going to be Procore connected, you don't want to select this because you'll end up with a lot of duplicate submittals. And I'll show you what that looks like soon if you do enable it. And you can always enable our submittal assistant by toggling on here. And this will generate hints on your submittals, or it will automatically create the logs. So that's totally optional, and I'll show you what the hint generation looks like once we get to creating a submittal soon. So looking at the document settings, this is the general area where you can upload your footer if you have one, and you can control which document types are available on your project. So this is what we saw earlier when we were creating the projects, and I said you could always modify that later. Moving over to the submittals tab, this is where we can change the document display name if you would like. So for example, if you look in part 3 at the top right here, where the plus is, this is where all documents are created. So right now we see that submittals are called submittals, but if you wanted to change that to shop drawings, you would add that information here, click save, and then we'll see here that it's referred to as shop drawings, which will also be reflective when you're at the shop drawing stage. So it just gives you that flexibility with the naming conventions. So my disclaimer, this is set up here, and this is pulled from the organization level, which I showed you earlier, but I can always override it if I wanted to by selecting create new. And you might want to do that if there's something specific about this project that you want to change your language on. And you always have the option to choose from different disclaimers that you have set up at the organization level. On the right-hand side, and this is probably the most important area when you're in this setting, is your document assignees. And the reason for this is when you create a submittal, you're assigning the task to a specific person automatically. So it just saves you a little bit of time. So I can see here that I have my architectural assignees selected, but I don't have anyone selected for civil, electrical, or my envelope consultant. So I'll show you how to do that. So all you have to do is click Add Assignees to determine who's going to be participating in that submittal. And we typically recommend selecting two people here because it might be more than one. And we can also select from a workflow as well. But in this case, I'm just going to select Caesar and Lauren, and then we want to select a primary assignee. So this allows both to complete the task. It's whichever is best for them. So in this case, I'm going to say Lauren is my primary assignee. And then you can specify which workflow you want this to apply to. So in this case, I'm going to say it also applies to RFIs, and I'll show you why in a second. It just saves you a step. And then you can decide if you want to override your documents to replace the assignees of all non-issued submittal documents and all non-issued docs. So I'm going to say yes to both. That's up to you though. But we see here we now have our assignees added. And if we pop on over to the RFIs tab, we can see that's the case as well because I selected for both submittals and RFI workflows. And you could select for all your document types if you wanted. So I'll just do one more quickly for the next discipline. I'm going to say tester one is my primary. It applies to RFIs. And now we have our default assignees added. So now that I've set everyone up, every time an RFI or submittal is created, these assignees will automatically be assigned to the document. Moving down to reminder schedules. If you're the prime, you can create reminder schedules for all document types in Part 3, and you can add due dates so reminders can be sent automatically. And it just helps keep the team on track, and it helps you from having to chase consultants through email, which we all know is a thing. And so this just helps automate the process. So to create a new reminder schedule, you can see I have one created already for certificates, but I'll show you how to create a new one. So you hit plus create new schedule, and then you want to click the document types that you want it to apply to. So in this case, I'm going to say submittals and RFIs, and now we need to select the interval. So in this case, I'm just going to add a bunch of intervals. So I'm going to set a reminder for emails to be um, for task reminders to be sent to consultants 2 days before the task is due, a day before it's due, on the day of, and then I'm going to do 1 day after if it's overdue. And now that it's created, I can see that it's running and consultants will be notified for RFI submittals. And again, it just keeps the team on track and eliminates you from having to chase anyone. You can always pause your schedule as well, and you can always click the email history so that once documents have been created, you'll see what notifications were sent out if you're ever curious about that. Moving down to distribution groups, this is where you can decide who's going to receive your documents automatically by creating distribution lists. So setting this up at the beginning of the project is important so that you don't need to do it on each document that you create. So if I hit plus create here and I want to create a distribution group for submittals and RFIs, I select those document types and I want to name my group. And then I want to add the individuals who are to receive the documents. So I can say my mechanical, prime, owner, civil, random, but you get the idea. So you'll set up your contacts here and then you can see all the information when you click the drop down. So now that I have this group set up, every time I create an RFI submittal, they'll automatically be included in that distribution, which is really great. Integrations is where your GC would come in to make the Procore connection, while export data is where you can export your project information. And this is for exporting all of your data from Part 3 anytime you need to. Maybe you want to do it at the end of the project. Maybe you do it on a monthly basis. It's totally optional and up to you. And you'll get a zipped file with all the documents on your project sent to your email when you click export. So that's it for the settings area. Let's take a look at the logs area where I'll show you how to create a submittal first, and then we'll hop into RFIs. So this is the submittals log area. And I use the AI tool to pre-populate my submittals list. And that's why it looks like this. You can see they're all in pending state. So that's how you know that the AI tool created it, the document. And we also have this little icon next to it, which indicates the AI created the submittal as well. And you can always modify an AI generated submittal anytime by clicking into it. You can add the attachment, you can add disciplines, And you can also delete it. If it created a submittal incorrectly based on your specification, you can easily just come in, hit those three dots, and delete that submittal. So to create a submittal, they can be created by either the prime or the general contractor. And as I said earlier, all documents in Part 3 are created in the top right corner by clicking the plus submittals button. So let's click plus submittal and we'll input the information. So starting with the division code, and in this case, I'm going to say it's 061600. We want to give it a title. And then we want to add a reference number. And this is if the GC or sub has their own reference number that they want to reference within Part 3. So in this case, I'll say they do. And then our receive date and due date, this information is pre-populated based on our earlier settings that we inputted. And then our disclaimer here, that's being pulled from our earlier settings as well. So this is all automated for you, which is great. And now I'm going to pick which consultants are involved in this submittal. So I'll say architectural and civil are required, and then I'll hit create. Now what I need to do is add the submittal document, and I can drag and drop it or attach it. So I think I have it here. So now the submittal document has been attached. So let's explore the review process from here. So we want to open up the document to review it with our annotation tools. And you'll notice at the top here that we generate hints. So these are AI hints. And what the hints does is it compares the spec with the submittal. So when you click on request hints, it can take a little while to generate, but once it's generated, it will show you a list of compared manufacturers, testing and compliance, colors, and warranty, which you can see here. And remember, these hints are just hints. They're not meant to replace you in any way. They're just meant to um, help make your reviews faster and hopefully more enjoyable. We also have additional hints at the top right-hand corner here. So if you wanted more hints, you could request that as well. Something hidden that a lot of customers don't seem to find. So just thought I would point that out. So when you're reviewing the submittal, I definitely recommend entering full screen. So we can hit review. I already have some markups on the submittal. I'm going to delete some to clean this up a little bit. And I'll show you how you can add those markups yourself. So to add a markup, we have these different annotation tools at the top here. And you can drop in text if you would like. You can add shapes. We'll go with that one. If you click on an annotation, you have more options with style. So if we say we want this to be green and we want it more of a rectangle, then we have that there. And the annotation tools, once you've changed the style, it will always remember your last style that you inputted. So it will continue from there. You can also add your stamp as well to a submittal. And unfortunately, right now they're not dynamic, but our team is working on that. So what you need to do is add your stamp, and then you would add the text tool to input the date over top. And I'll just quickly show you how to add your stamp to your settings so that they're accessible here. So if we go to our initials in the top right-hand corner and then go to account settings, this is where we have the options to add our stamps in this area here. And you would just click plus new stamp and then upload an image file of your stamp and then rename it. I do recommend signing your stamp in advance as well as selecting which stamp this is. It will just make your review a little bit quicker until we have dynamic stamps. So going back to our submittal here, once it's been reviewed with the annotation tools, we need to add our review on the right-hand side here. So this includes the status as well as comments. So in this case, I'm going to say that it's reviewed. I don't have any comments, and then I'll click submit review. And collaborators have the same view as Prime in this area. So in this case, Civil would, the interface would appear the same. So they have the same option to add their annotations as well as their review status will say that Civil rejected it, see submittal for comments, and they added a note. And what we'll see here with these reviews is that they're being pre-populated on the cover page. And so this includes both reviews, architectural and civil, as well as any disclaimers and logos that the companies might have. And we also show who reviewed it and on what date. Consultants can always upload their own logos and disclaimers, so we're letting them work uniquely to their company and allowing them to use their legal language that they would typically use at their firm as well. Another thing to note here is given that we have two different review statuses, the overall review is always going to be worst case scenario. So in this case, the submittal is going to be returned as rejected. Now I'm going to explain the bottom area here that I mentioned earlier. So we have our comments area, and this is internal to consultants in Prime. So your GC and owner, they don't have access to this area. And what this does is it basically replaces email so that you can keep conversations at the document level. So in this case, I could at mention Lauren, and you have to at mention so that they receive a notification, and I can say, please take a look at this. And then Lauren will receive an email notification as a reminder that they need to take a peek at the submittal. It might be a discussion of did we accept this product or whatnot, and you can keep that information at the document level. The history area is where we track the history of a document. So we can see when documents were delivered and the distribution of those documents. And again, this is standard across all documents in Part 3. So I can see here that I updated civil status for rejected. So it really gives the fine details of what happened on a document. Files reference area is for any documents attached to the current workflow. So in this case, we only have the one submittal, so we see that referenced here. So when I'm ready, I can return the submittal by selecting return in the top right corner here. Before returning it though, I'm just going to touch on the distribution list. So again, earlier in our settings, we created a distribution list for RFIs and submittals. So it's being pulled automatically, which is great. And then you can always select manage if you don't want to include certain people. Um, totally up to you. So we see that distribution has been updated from there. You want to make sure your distribution is correct prior to returning the document because then the correct people will be notified. So when I'm ready, I can select return at the top right here. And if there are multiple files, you can select which ones you want to return. So if I had 3 files attached in this review, I could select just one or all 3. It's optional. Then we'll hit continue and we get a general recap of everything, starting with the distribution list that I just pointed out, as well as the files to distribute, and then an overall of the reviews that are being returned. And you can also add a distribution message if you'd like. So you could say, this is the priority submittal you requested at the OAC, and then we can select return. And this will send a Part 3 email to those on the distribution list. And if you made a mistake, you can always revise this submittal by selecting revise. So it has been distributed. You can download the final document here, and we'll have our cover page as well as our submittal with our markups. So you can see what's being returned. But in order to revise, you would just click the revise here. And you'll notice that the submittal has gone into an R1 status. So this helps keep you on track so you understand what document you're at. So if you check here, we have this bar, which keeps a history of the document. So we have our first submittal, which is still in Part 3. And then if you click here, we have our current with R1 status. So then yourself and consultants, you would review the submittal again and then return it when you're happy with it. So that's the basics of submittals. I'm going to walk you through RFIs now, which is an even more straightforward process than submittals. So looking at the RFIs logs, we have the RFI ID, the title, if it has any pricing documents related to it, reference number, the status of the return, any consultants who are involved, as well as dates that are important to the team. So to create an RFI, again, you might have guessed you would hit the plus RFI in the top right corner. And now we need to input the information for this RFI. So in this case, we'll say that it's architectural and carpet tile. It's up to you if you want to title your RFIs starting with discipline or not. I like to, it just helps with project sorting. But again, it's optional. Reference number, again, this is if your GC has a reference number, and then receive and due dates, that's pre-populated. And then you can add the RFI question here. So we can say, what is the color selection for the carpet tile C1? And now sometimes RFI questions are in PDF format only, so you can leave that blank. Anything marked with an asterisk is a required field, but if it's not required, it's optional. So in this case, we don't see an asterisk here, so you don't have to fill this in. And now you want to add which consultants are involved. I'm going to say architectural and civil. And now that the RFI is created, let's explore the review process here. And as I mentioned just a second ago, if there was a PDF attachment, you could upload it here, which is pretty standard that you would see that. So with the review process, I'll just add a document here to show you that we still have our same annotation tools. So obviously this document doesn't apply to this RFI, but if, say, it was an image of carpet or who knows what, you could mark this up if you wanted to return that in the submittal. But the first thing to make sure is that the right people are included in the RFI. Sometimes GCs will send the RFI and it's only sent to Prime, and then Prime will add consultants from there. Definitely depends on how you have that workflow set up with your GC. So definitely discussion to have. In this case, we have civil already added. I'm going to remove civil though. I don't think they're required for architectural RFI. And again, like submittals, consultants do have the same response area on the right-hand side here. And we have our comments, history, files, reference. That's all standard across the board. So if we want to respond to this RFI, we can add our response here. I'll say see notes on the attached, pretending that I gave a response there. And then we can hit submit response. And again, just like submittals, once we're adding that review status on the right-hand side, it's automatically populating on the cover page here. Again, we know who it was reviewed by on the date and then any response comments as well. So once all responses are added, I can return the RFI. In this case, I didn't assign a discipline, I think because Russell isn't on my project anymore. So I'll assign it to myself and then I can click return. Don't forget, you can always modify your distribution by selecting manage prior to distributing. In this case, I'm happy with it, so I'm just going to leave that. Then we'll select return. Again, if you have multiple documents, but you only want to return one or you don't want to return any at all, you don't have to. We'll hit continue. Now we have the distribution list, a little recap summary here. And we can see the files that are being distributed as well as the response, and then an optional message that they would receive in the email. So you could say, again, this is urgent RFI you're talking about, and then we'll hit return. And with RFIs, we of course have the revision option as well. So you see here, we're on RFI 5, which is the original. If we hit revise, we can say that the GC came back needing more clarification and they want to notify me. They can say, we don't see this info on the drawings, request revision, and now you'll see that it goes into RFI 5.1. So again, we're maintaining the previous document, so you can always reference back. Nothing's being deleted there. And we have the new RFI question, and then you would continue with the same response flow. So you'd add your response here, say I needed more consultants involved. Maybe I needed civil this time. I could add them to this flow. We could add our responses and then return the RFI. So rather than creating new RFIs for the same topic, the conversation keeps flowing here, which is great. And that's really it for submittals in RFI. We've covered the Part 3 basics. So you've learned how to set up your organization, create a project, navigate the menus, create RFIs and submittals. And I will mention we have this ask feature. This is called our help beacon in the bottom right-hand corner. And this does two things. So with our answers tab, if you're looking for something, say we're looking for info on RFIs, we can search that. Say we didn't know how to create an RFI, we could click that and we have our help documents here. And then we also have the ask feature, which say there's something in the help center that you can't find information on, you can always ask here, which connects you directly to our support team, which includes myself and others. And the beauty of using the beacon is that we can see what page you're on. So you don't have to explain to us which project you're on, which RFI. You can say, I revised this and it's not working, and we're able to help you quickly. So definitely worth reaching out to us. If you're ever stuck, we're always here. If you have any other questions after our session today, feel free to reach out in the beacon and we'll be sure to get back to you. So thanks for your time today. We look forward to working with you in part 3. Bye, everyone.